Welcome back to part two with Stuart Linnell, former sports editor of Radio Hallam. Stuart Linnell, MBE for services to broadcasting some years ago. I do remember that conversation. And also, by the way, I'll come back to that, with David Robins, former groundsman at Bramall Lane in the days of football and of cricket, with some stories to tell. Yeah, I remember you ringing me up and saying, I wonder if you've got the Sheffield. It was early in one year, and you said, do you happen to take the Sheffield Star? So I said, well, occasionally. What day did you want it for? And you said something like January the 1st or 2nd. So I said, well, I'll have a look. I said, any particular reason? And you said, oh, I've got the MBE and the New Year's Honours List. I said, you what? What on earth have you got that for? It was rather an irreverent reaction. I'm sorry about that, but I'm sure very, very well deserved.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm absolutely sure. And if you don't know about this guy's career, do Google him. He's got a Wikipedia, very clever Wikipedia actually. It's something I also believe in. It doesn't state his age. It does not state his date of birth or age, and you won't find mine out there anywhere either, for that matter. Or you, David Robins, perhaps. Just a word before we recommence the conversation about James Gregg. You'll notice I think you'll notice he's not here this evening, and sadly he won't be here quite a lot of the time in future. It's unfortunate for us, but it's fortunate for James. I'm sure fortune has actually not played too big a part, because he's an excellent operator, has got stacks of work with the BBC in London. Wish him well on that. It's very, very well deserved. He will be popping back in occasionally to help us out here. I do miss him with the running up and down stairs, collecting guests and making cups of tea and things like that, but also for his excellent roundup that he does every week. It's never been a boss-worker relationship. We've just basically come together as a bit of a hobby more than anything. James originally for work experience, and me at a different stage of my career thinking, oh, I'd love to do that. So much missed, but much appreciated, and we will see James again in future. Right. Stuart, I've written down the name. Well, you were. I tell you what, we'll come to this in a minute, because Sheffield United have had a cracking start in the Premier League, and you know a fair bit about the man behind it all.
Yes, Chris Wilder, of course, was manager at Northampton Town, and I did the breakfast show there for 7 of the past 10 years, and he came on the show a couple of times. A great guy, and Northampton Town Football Club have Chris Wilder to thank for still being in existence, because as with a number of clubs lately, as we know, the owners at the time were not the best perhaps in the way they handled things. They'd borrowed money from the local council to build a new stand, which still has not been completed, I have to say, many years on, or a number of years on. And the whole row was threatening the future of Northampton Town Football Club. On BBC Radio Northampton, not with me, but after a match to one of our sports reporters, Chris Wilder gave an interview which turned into an impassioned plea for people who could do something about it to use a bit of common sense and work together, otherwise this football club isn't going to exist, was basically the message from him. And that got through to people. As it happens, he'd already got in the back of his mind an old friend of his who he'd worked with elsewhere to come in as the new chairman. And so that all panned out well, and that was the season in which Northampton Town, who'd struggled horribly at the start of the season, they were bottom of the table, looked as though they're going to go out of business. Not only did they stay in business, but they won promotion. Yeah. And you know, that guy, I think if the people of Northampton could give it an MBE or a knighthood to anybody, they would give it to Chris Wilder.
It was a Churchillian speech, wasn't it? I listened to it again quite recently, and there have been things that have happened here that have slightly echoed that. And, you know, he really, I was going to use the word set an ultimatum. He didn't really. He stated some pretty harsh facts at the end of the season a couple of years ago, when the club appeared to be going nowhere in the boardroom. And he jolted and stimulated a response, which then led to promotion.
And I'd like to think, Alan, that you and I maybe had some small hand in his formative years, because I think I'm right in saying, as a 7 or 8 year old, you might have listened to us on Radio Hallam. I don't know whether that's true, and I would like to, and I gather he watches your show, so maybe if he's watching,
his wife does. Well, his wife told me she does.
But a great man, Chris Wilder.
Yeah, absolutely. Man. Yeah, absolutely. And what he's doing in the Premier League. You know, I think they've, you know, from 4 games, 5 points, is it? Have I got that right?
Yeah, yes.
Is not unexpected for those of us who've watched this team and squad, the way they've worked, and the positive attitude within it. I think they'll carry on surprising people.
They look good, don't they?
Yes, very good. Yeah.
And the way they're doing it as well is very refreshing. Sheffield Wednesday, they're in a bit of a state of flux at the moment. You know, they've had Lee Bullen as caretaker manager, for whom I've got an enormous amount of respect and sympathy, because he keeps being thrust into this role. He does as well as he can, and you know, his actual record as caretaker across 3 spells is pretty decent, but he's been judged from game to game, and I think at the moment it would appear that a new manager is going to be recruited. And the Cowley brothers at Lincoln are heavily in the frame, at least the bookies' hot favourites. Good to see. In a way, you see, they're doing an apprenticeship rather like Chris Wilder did, although it's been a shorter one.
And it'll be interesting, won't it, if they do get the test of a bigger club, which Sheffield Wednesday clearly is than Lincoln City, how they would get on, whether they'd be able to carry it on somewhere else, or whether Lincoln is there. Because with some managers, it's the case, isn't it, that there's just a club where they click and they go somewhere else and it doesn't quite work.
Yes. Keith Hill and Rochdale.
There are many examples. So it'd be interesting to see if they could pull it off at Sheffield.
It's a big step for them, though, isn't it? It's a big step.
It's a step that they would deserve if they get the job.
100%.
And really, although I was thinking, you know, how would they handle players of greater stature and very, very well paid players, underperforming in some cases at Sheffield Wednesday, from handling League One and League Two players, you could flip that round. If anybody challenges them, their record is a damn sight better than the players in that dressing room. So that would come out. And they were also big characters, because I tend to think, Stuart, the managers who've done well at Sheffield Wednesday over the years have been big on personality or strength of character. I mean, for instance, you know, Jack Charlton, Ron Atkinson, and I was with Ron last night, I'm name dropping, but I'll mention that in a minute. Does that occur to you as well? That Howard Wilkinson, not a big personality, but a very strong character.
And a man that a lot of other managers admire and turn to for advice, Howard Wilkinson.
Yeah.
So he's obviously got something that the other coaches recognise. And I think that's probably true with many of the people you just mentioned at Sheffield Wednesday. And of course, the days when Jack was there were just remarkable, really. I mean, Jack, who never had his own cigarette, somebody else had to offer him one, could never remember players' names. What a great guy he was. Great guy, Jack Charlton. That work still is.
Yeah, because I remember you would interview him on a weekly basis, wouldn't you, down there? I remember being quite overawed by this character, and that before you sort of got to know the fact that he treated virtually everybody the same, didn't he?
Oh, he did. Yeah.
There was no. You know, he talked to anybody. And yeah, Jack Charlton. Another great character across the city was Harry Haslam, of course, at Sheffield United.
Harry Haslam, who phoned me up one day to say Gillette got the beard, you see. So that was Harry's joke. I was Gillette because I got a beard.
They still got it.
And bits of it's still there, changed colour now. But he said, Gillette, what are you doing on Wednesday? So I said, why? He said, because I'm going to Argentina. Do you want to come? So I said, this was Monday morning. I said, what? You know, you take a breath, don't you?
Yeah.
Step back. And I thought, well, what have I got on? What can I do? And in the end, I couldn't make it work. So Tony Pritchett went from the Sheffield staff. Remember Tony?
Yes.
And he went out there. Yeah. And of course, Harry had fixed up to go to Argentina to look at players. His big friend was Ratan, the captain from Argentina from '66 from the World Cup, and he was going to take Terry Neal from Arsenal, and Terry Neal cried off for some reason, didn't want to go. So in the end, he took Keith Birkinshaw from Tottenham Hotspur. And as we know, Keith Birkinshaw came back with Ardiles and Villa, and Harry came back with Alex Abea, but not before he said to me, Gillette, if you're not going to come, why don't you phone me? I'll give you the number where I'm going to be. Phone me every morning, and I'll record something for you if you like, because we've gone really well. So I said that'd be fantastic. So I did a call to Argentina every day from our studios in Sheffield. And this one day he said, Gillette, are you recording? I said, yeah. He said, right, don't ask me any questions, let me tell you. So go on then. I've just seen the greatest footballer anybody will ever see. He can pass the ball better than anybody else. He can head the ball better than anybody else. And when he takes a throw in, he's magnificent. I said, who are we talking about? Oh, I don't know, Madonna or somebody. He said, of course, he'd seen Maradona.
Yeah.
And he said, and I asked if I could buy him, and they won't let me because they've got him earmarked for the next World Cup. They won't let me. But I've got Alex Sabella. And he brought Alejandro Sabella to Bramall Lane.
Well, we had problems. I remember you used to dispatch me to Bramall Lane in those days. Sabella to me.
Yeah.
But yes, I was persuaded. It was Sabella.
Yeah.
Did you have very much dealings, David, with managers as groundsmen?
I think a lot more then than they do now. Yes, we got involved quite a lot. He'd come out and have chat to us, and when we were working.
Yeah.
Well,
any of them?
Yeah, we've got quite a few managers.
Which ones did you work with?
Well, we started off with John Harris, and then Arthur Rowley came in. Then Ken Furphy, as you mentioned, Jimmy Cyril. Seth Coble took over for a short time, didn't he?
Did you get on with them?
Yeah, everybody. I mean, Arthur Rowley, telling you a story before we went on air, he had the idea that we must play this game this weekend, but there's a really hard frost forecast, so we decided to put some straw on the pitch and cover the whole of Bramall Lane in straw. Fantastic sight, if you can imagine all of them, especially under the floodlights. Yeah. And but of course, what happened that evening? We had a heavy snowfall, and we was unable to move the straw, so the game got postponed.
Yeah. So your straw was buried under under snow, so it's impossible. Stuart, I've written down a name that will mean very little to most people listening, but you and I work with a news guy called Robin Etherington.
Correct.
But I don't know why I've written his name down.
Goes back to the story I was telling you just before you took the break, where Sheffield United had asked us to pay money to otherwise we couldn't go into Bramall Lane. Right. So we reached this impasse. We said no, they said you can't come in. So we dispatched Robin Etherington, a news reporter who knew enough about football to get by, to sit on top of the radio car behind the wall at Bramall Lane, look over the top and report from the street on the match. And that got us the front page of the Start, needless to say, and a lot of coverage. And United went, all right, look, forget it, come back in. So
what a great story. I think that was just before I joined the station, because I don't remember reporting any games from looking over a wall.
That one, just the one.
Yeah. He mentioned Harry Haslam and the character that he was. He always had a joke. A really nice guy, I thought. I wish it had worked out for him at Bramall Lane. But of course, he brought Danny Bergara with him.
He did.
What a big character. Danny, I got to know Danny very well.
And I remember, and I think it was Attercliffe, but it was a working men's club with a massive bar. So would that be Attercliffe? It probably would be, wouldn't it? Anyway,
it could be,
big room, and the Daily Express were doing a series of forums across the country with football managers, and they said radio stations could record it.
Yeah.
So I chaired it, and we had Peter Jackson from the Express, reporter. Jack was there. Harry didn't come. He sent Danny Bergara, and our star turn was Brian Clough.
Wow.
And needless to say, the place is absolutely rammed with people, absolutely packed. Yeah. And it got a bit noisy because this bar is really big, and Cloughie was in the middle of some peroration about football in some way. He was giving it large, as it were. Yeah. And the noise at the bar was a bit too much, a bit overwhelming. So I put my hand on his arm, big mistake, on his arm, and said, "Excuse me, Brian, if we can have a bit less noise," and he cut me off. He knew what I was going to do, cut me off straight away. "Mr. Chairman, how much are they paying you to do this?" Yeah. And I'm going... he blew me, and Peter Jackson jumped in and said, "Brian, we're covering the bill tonight." So Peter got me out of trouble, the guy from the Daily Express. Yeah. Brian, we're covering this. And then he turned to me, Clough, he said, "See, you ask him a question and he's completely stumped. Now, where were we?" And then he goes back to his speech again. But that was a cracking night.
I can imagine he could have been very difficult too. I didn't have the pleasure with Brian Clough, apart from one game where he and his Nottingham Forest team became Sheffield United's first victims in December of their promotions of their first season back in the top flight under Dave Bassett. They went all the way through to December the 22nd without winning a match. And it was the great escape. And United United beat Forest 3-2, and we all waited at the end of the corridor for we didn't see either manager to speak to. Dave Bassett was so relieved that he sank himself into a bottle of scotch, right, and never appeared, which is unheard of for Dave. You know, he just basically. The relief was so great, and Brian Clough came along the corridor, saw us all assembled there, and stopped. And we all thought, oh, he's going to speak to us, because he was in an incommunicado mode at that time, didn't do interviews, and he just stood there and said, "Merry Christmas, gentlemen," right? And I actually wrote it down because I thought it was a quote. And somebody started to then pounce on that as an opening for a conversation. And he turned on his heel and then stopped and turned around. And I say, "Merry Christmas, gentlemen," and walked off. And that was said it twice, yeah. 2 quotes. Enough of that. Where are we? Oh, I'd like to thank everybody who came last night. I mean, Stuart was talking about his forum that he was presenting. I've got the pleasure of interviewing a series of top sports personalities at Abbeydale Sports Club, which you remember well, in Sheffield. The first one was last night. I think we had a cracking start. I'd like to thank everybody who came, and in particular Ron Atkinson, who was a magical guest there last night, and that's the forerunner to many more of these things. Trying to remember, you can book tickets at Abbeydale. We've got Dave Bassett next, followed by Gary Megson, Terry Curran, Brian Dean, and also Kevin Gage and John Newsom are appearing. So this is keeping me gainfully employed, which is the name of the game, Stuart. You tell us what you do these days. And
well, I've been in Coventry, as I say, for the past 40-odd years, and covering Coventry City Football Club, which means quite a lot to me. I'm happy to say I was commentating on the '87 Cup final, great game against Tottenham. Yeah. And indeed, I've been to Wembley with them on all 4 occasions. We've only lost once, and that was in what used to be called the Community Shield. After that Cup final '87, and we lost to Everton. But we've won promotion there. We won the Checkatrade Trophy and then promotion in a playoff. So I do a Friday night phone-in show, back to where I started really.
Yeah, with your Hannum in the late '70s, you introduced the Friday phone-in, didn't you?
That's right. That's right. But we do that for Coventry City on a Friday, and I do some work still with my friends in Northampton from time to time if they've got people on holiday or whatever. I go and do a little bit of not just sport but general programming relief. Yeah. But just coming back to United on Wednesday, which is what we're really talking about here.
We should be.
Yeah, and those 2 derbies we mentioned in the 3rd division. I don't know whether you remember the one when Bobby Nutt turned up to be the half-time entertainment. Do you remember that?
I can't remember that. No, I'm sorry.
No,
because Bobby Nutt, if you remember, is a huge blade, huge United fan.
Yes, he was.
And he walked out, and he was the half-time entertainment comedian with this massive crowd. What is he going to do to keep them going and keep all of it on one side? Because everybody knows he supports United. He walked out with a bomber jacket on.
Oh yes, I think I know.
Unzipped, United red stripes, and he turns towards the United fans when he got to the centre spot, and they are cheering and chanting his name, Nutty, Nutty, Nutty. Turns round to the Wednesday fans, showing the same thing. Of course, they start to boo him. Yeah. Lets the jacket slip off, and down the back of the jacket he's got blue and white stripes, which this lot are now booing until he turns around, and then everybody starts to cheer. And he made that last nearly 10 minutes. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
That is, isn't it just? Brought everybody together.
Absolutely.
Everybody appreciated that. Yeah. And despite the intensity of the rivalry, we need things like that, I think.
We do.
Just to remind us what real life is.
Give us a laugh about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You, Coventry City, you're heavily involved with. I know that you've done match day announcing duties there over the years. You got very close to that club, and I know you're particularly close to Jimmy Hill, weren't you? The late Jimmy Hill.
I got to know Jimmy. I knew him very, very briefly before I went back to work in Coventry, as it were, having left Haldom in 1980. But yes, but on his 2nd time round, he became chairman, of course, for a time. I got to know him very well. He's a lovely man, and he was always very aware from his own media days why you were talking to him. You wanted a story, so whenever he saw you, he said, "Come and sit with me, let me tell you something." And he'd always give you a line. Great guy.
Wonderful. Let's just rattle through a few memory lane photographs of Bramall Lane when it was cricket. There we are. There's a game in motion there at the lane that's looking towards John Street with the Kop on the right-hand side. I think we've got a couple of similar pictures. I'm not entirely sure who was playing there. There we have a side-on view, all very familiar to you,
Yes. Yeah.
David,
Yeah.
from that era.
I think that's...
There's one colour shot I think coming up. This is a view from the John Street side, looking towards the pavilion. So you can see clearly there's a football pitch there with the centre circle and cricket pitch beyond. And I think
you can see the difference in the surfaces there between the football pitch and the cricket pitch.
Yes, how it was shaded.
Yes,
yeah. That's a nice. And this one, which I particularly like as a shot, which just shows the two sports basically in one shot, taken from behind the goal at the Kop end. How did you manage to have the skills to to prepare cricket pitches and also football pitches? Does that require?
Well, I left school when I was 16, and that's all I've done all my life is to maintain sports fields, cricket pitches, football pitches, and it's all I've done all my life, to be honest, and that's what I'm still doing now. I left in '84 with Sheffield United to start my own business, and that's what we still do now: is manage and maintain sports facilities.
Is that right?
All over. Yes, most of the work's now been taken on by my eldest son. But we do quite a lot of work for the Sheffield City Council, maintaining bowling greens in the parks in Sheffield. We've got a few football pitches and cricket pitches, North East Derbyshire, and in the Sheffield area. We're still doing it now.
And pitch technology has moved on.
Oh, unbelievable! I don't think I couldn't go back to Bramall Lane now and maintain the ground like they do, because this growing the grass under the lights and underwater, the irrigation systems and the heating systems, what they have now to get the grass to grow. It's just gone different, completely different.
Despite that, in your day, it always had that pitch. I seem to recall had a very good reputation.
Yeah, we did.
I think you could bat on it.
Yeah.
But I think equally you could get wickets on it, couldn't you?
Yeah, they used to say it was quite a sporting wicket.
Yeah.
There's something for everyone.
Did you have any particularly memorable interaction with players from those days? I mean, Yorkshire had some big characters then, didn't they?
Freddie Truman, yeah.
Did you have any?
Yeah, quite a few. Somewhat I'm not prepared to make.
Is that right?
Oh, definitely, yes.
Some choice words.
Yes. Yeah.
They weren't
great characters.
They weren't always happy with what you prepared.
No, a boycott. It may have been that day what you said. You saw him, Jeff Boycott, out for naught, and he was walking off, and somebody in the pavilion made a remark. You don't know what you're talking about, sir. It's the wicket. What's the problem? It's the wicket.
Is that what he said?
Yes, as he walked up the steps.
Did he really?
He did, yes.
I remember who got him out. It was Van Bernholder, I think.
Right.
Van Bernholder was the opening bowler. And I forget how he was out. I think he was fending one off and got caught or something. I don't know. He'd remember, wouldn't he?
Oh, absolutely, he'd remember.
If he was here now, he would remember that.
He would know, yeah.
Was that playing West Indies then?
West Indies, yes.
Gary Sobers was playing for them at the time as well.
Yeah. What was Fred like to deal with?
It's all right, down to earth, straight Yorkshireman, wasn't he? Yeah.
I thought so too. I had the pleasure of a couple of interviews just after you, or around your time actually.
Probably.
Some brilliant chats with him. I really liked him. I found him easier to deal with certainly than GB. But for all the respect that we have, our time has nearly gone, and it's such a pleasure to see both of you. David, we've not met until recently. It was actually at Robert Jackson's funeral.
It was. I met Robert first through cricket, when he used to commentate for cricket when Yorkshire was playing at Bramall Lane. That's when I first started getting to know Bob.
Lovely man.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Pleasure to see you, and great to see you, Stuart, as well, after quite a few years. Last I saw you at Sheffield Cricket Lovers Society.
Indeed,
you were regaling them a few years ago.
Yeah.
Many more years in the business to you.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to see you. I think we're going to have a drink across the road. David, Stuart, thanks very much. Repeat at 11 on my YouTube. See ya. Bye.